Okay, so the stream is going now. So we are at just at 6 o'clock. So I think it's time to commence.
Okay. Ask for the calling of the roll, please.
Thank you. Mayor Edie,
Present.
Reeve Eman, Councillor Koulis,
Present.
Councillor Evans,
Present.
Councillor Hines,
Present.
Councillor Jamison,
Present.
Councillor Sidney.
Present.
We do have a quorum, Mayor Edie.
Thank you. Is there any declaration of paternity interest and the general nature thereof? Okay, not hearing any. The first motion is that Stephen Fournier appear before council to present the municipal structure review final report dated October 15th, 2020. That's for a mover, please. Councillor Jamison, seconded by Councillor Hines. Any questions on this at all? All in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll turn it over to Mr. Fournier for his presentation, I guess.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Edie. I thought maybe what I would do is just focus primarily on the key pieces of the final draft that really are what council need to focus on, as opposed to walking through page by page at this stage. And if you're satisfactory with, if you're happy with that, that's the way I'd like to go.
Fine with me.
Okay. The first comment I'd like to make is I want to express both my thanks and my appreciation very much for the feedback from the initial input through to the feedback at various stages and the final feedback on the final draft version. It allowed me to focus on a few things that were obviously needed some refocusing, if you like. And it was very, very helpful. And I truly appreciated that input that came through. And I did my very best to reflect most, if not all, of that input and feedback that came to me by email. And I have to express my appreciation for it. One of the key things, and I need to take a moment to speak to this, is that when I look back at the draft report, there was an edge to it with respect to the senior management team and how it worked and how it wasn't working. And it was an edge that once I took a careful look at, I decided, and you probably saw the changes on pages 10 to 11. I simply summarized the concerns that arose during the interviews that I had with members of council and staff. And there were some examples that some people agreed with and didn't agree with, and that's silly. There's no sense debating those sorts of things. Those things were simply removed. And the concerns at a broad level, or in some cases somewhat specifically, were just simply noted and addressed so that they're there as forming part of the report. And that's, as I said, on pages 10 and 11. And then there was one paragraph that I added because I've been in the chair, I've been in the seat, and I've experienced it. And I really, really had to take some time and talk about, I wanted to acknowledge in the report both the individual and the collective professional dedication of the SMT team. It's functioned for over 30 years and it's achieved a lot. And I wanted to take some time in the report to rather than criticize how it was functioning, particularly recently, but to acknowledge also what it has contributed to the town of Renfrew over 30 years. And I wanted to stress that point in the report. The next area that we looked at that I really wanted to sort of is really putting a little more detail to the implementation plan, especially the immediate implementation plan. And here I've developed a couple of options where we can begin to think about how we might implement the changes that are being recommended. And the first sets of recommendations, and I'm on page 19 now, with respect to the transitioning and from the SMT team to a full CAO model. While that general direction has not changed in my mind, it's still a critical path forward that I believe is important to be taken. I've provided a couple of options to begin to take the first steps to get there on page 19. You can see them. And one is to pick up on the recommendation that was initially in the draft, where we would look at appointing a current manager to perform the CAO role and be responsible for reporting back to council as a whole on taking the steps to implement the changes. That in and of itself presents challenges. I know I have been in the role, I've served as a CAO, and I think that the opportunity to bring in someone from the outside is something that I had overlooked and something that you might want to think about and discuss. And that is contracting the services of a former well-experienced person who served as a CAO in the municipal sector. There are many of us out there and who are and have performed that role in the past. And I'm not specifically asking you to hire me, that's not the point. The point is simply to say, you should consider that as a helpful means of moving through the implementation and allowing your senior managers to continue to get the jobs done that they need to do while you have the assistance and help and the expertise to move you through in the first 3 to 6 months or thereabout the implementation strategies that are proposed here. So that's a modification to the original report. And then I also understood that I haven't heard much about the LEG report and a number of things. And while the report talks about finding cost efficiencies within the current departmental structure, for example, consolidating departments or doing things like that, I think that rather than deciding which ones should be, and let me back up, rather than recommending one, I think that should be chosen as you start to move through the implementation stages by the person that's going to be responsible for implementing the program, and having a closer look to see, in particular, tying in the retirement schedules, making sure that the contractual obligations are being addressed and properly addressed, and things like that, that allows the town to carefully take each step and predicate it on sound planning, if you like, as opposed to saying, oh, let's consolidate this department because it sounds good. I think you need to step back and say, okay, let's have a look at how the current structure is going to unfold and exit, and let's understand how that works and what the obligations are, and let's begin to work with that to see where the efficiencies lie. So it's a long drawn out explanation of a slight wording change to that set of recommendations. I didn't talk too much, Your Worship, during the last Zoom meeting about the committee piece, and I'll just take a couple of minutes right now to do that. First of all, what I found was, without question, while there were some people who raised the point about the current structure and some of the features of it, the vast majority of your organization, from staff through to council, know, like, and want the standing committee system to operate and work, as opposed to moving to a committee of the whole situation. And when you look at your composition and the backgrounds of your council members and how that has worked for you in the past, it isn't the time to start unfolding something that's working. Recommending some tweeting, if you like, to fix up some things in there. And once the organizational structure is determined and departmental structure is in place, then I would say your council should take a careful look at, okay, from a standing committee point of view, let's make sure that aligns with our organizational structure so that works. And so there could be some changes to the standing committee structure, but until you go hand in glove and work together, I can't recommend that you abandon your standing committee structure. And as you noted, Your Worship, a few times, there are many things that work well about it. And at this point, while there is some, I call them minor criticisms of the operation, I'm not about to recommend any major changes to that structure at the moment, okay? And I just wanted to take some time to talk about that. What we didn't also touch upon was the resource supports and things like that. And really those sets of recommendations, again, are simply, you know, once they're set up and once they're up and running, they're automatic. And it's, you know, from, you know, regularly reviewing procedural bylaws and your roles and your responsibilities. And even though it sounds like could be repetitive, you know, whether it's an annual review or every second year, looking at all of those key documents and also looking about how well they're working and what changes you might want to make as a council and as staff to those things, that's important. And that needs to be initiated as part of your initial implementation of changes to the organization. There's things like that. Similarly, things like strategic planning or corporate planning, or at least just beginning to look at setting some goals and some measurable objectives. Again, I'll talk about it in a little more detail, but implementing those sorts of tools really help both council and the administrative side of the organization to begin to move forward together. And in my experience, that type of work, when you work together like that, is really a strong team building mechanism between council, staff, and then ultimately with the community as you open up that process. There are a number of administrative things that need to be addressed, and they're identified here. Things like performance appraisals, that sort of thing. All of that can kick in or be rejuvenated because you did them, and you have some of the tools in place. You simply need to make sure there's guidance and leadership to make sure that they continue on, get done, and unfold. Probably one of the bigger changes, and it's a change that I could sense in the comments that was needed to the plan, was really to talk about a more detailed implementation work plan. And I did that on pages 34 and 35 in the document. And what I wanted to do is just spend a little time to conclude my comments on this chart. And does everyone have it in front of them? Okay, alrighty, that's good. So the final report itself, it's to complete the review and establish the directions, and that's council. Council will probably want to also consult and work with staff, but council ultimately will decide, well, which way and which direction it wants to take and what changes it wants to consider and how it might want to make those changes. Those recommendations are, and in terms of the organizational structure and things like that, are set out in the report for council's consideration. So once that happens, and once council then begins to establish a direction or a sense of direction, then you should, in my mind, select the interim CAO management option. Whichever one it's going to be, one or two, but you should select it so there is some staffing oversight, management oversight, to ensure that the implementation strategies and the basic fundamental things of the organization are an eye's being kept on them and they're moving and that sort of thing. So that would be, in my mind, sort of the next sort of step. If your council is willing to look at reorganizing, then put in place the human resource piece that will help you do it. And when I say human resource, I mean the CAO role in that particular case. And then I think what you'd have to do, the third step, is to confirm the status of the SMT contracts and make sure that the obligations of council and the rights of your employees are properly recognized and known and acknowledged. And I see council working through that. Now, I've established some tentative timelines here, as you can see in the report. Those are meant just to be not symbolic, but a reasonable amount of time. But the start time will determine whether the 2-week period, for example, that we're looking at complete the review, well, we're at October 28th right now, so we're a week later. So the timelines might be adjusted accordingly. I think the next step is to determine the dates for the SMT retirement and recruitment strategies that would begin to address those retirements. And the interim CAO and the senior management team need to work together to get that done. You need to also look at securing, and fairly quickly and in reasonably short order, the appropriate HR resource support. And I think both council and the interim CAO role would be instrumental in getting that looked at and addressed so that that resource is available when it's needed. I then see begin to initiate, not in a big furious way, but in a nice, slow, step-by-step way, the team building initiatives. For example, let's just do a 2-year strategic plan for the balance of this council. And that's a very easy exercise that can be facilitated nicely, and council and senior staff can sit down and you can get it done in a day. It's not difficult to do. It's very easy. And that sort of thing, so that you can begin to develop that strategic direction in the team building piece. Regular staff meetings by departments and then corporate wide, things like that. I could see the interim CAO, SMT, and council and overseeing that piece. Then also the review of procedural bylaws, policies, and processes. Step at a time, one document at a time, but start it. Get it finished, walk through it, and then pick up the next piece. And again, the interim CAO responsibility with SMT and with council could all begin to work together on that. Beginning in, well, for example, here it was saying beginning of December, and then it would be ongoing, because that's something that never ends, regardless of who's in the seat, whether it's you, your worship, or members of council or staff. You're always having a look at these things and always reviewing them. And then also during this interim period, this first sort of 3 to 6 months, I think it will be critical to have some initial rounds of looking at the organizational cost efficiencies. We now have a feeling for the timelines for retirement of the senior management team. We know what the contract obligations are. We probably by this point in time, you will hopefully have the LEG report in, and the LEG will also, as I understand it, this is designed to provide some efficiencies as well for it. So we don't want to jump too quickly. We want to make sure that we don't move on too quickly and repeat or duplicate work that ultimately is going to appear in LEG. But again, that should start. Similarly, in this first sort of couple of months, I think you should look at initiating a review and a standardization of your committee agendas, minutes, and reports. And you have a very, very well qualified clerk. You have staff and the resources there that I think it's just pending some time, you can begin to work through that and begin to arrive at something that a format that in terms of how things are done, how amended committee agendas are prepared, how the minutes and the reports and things like that are standardized so that everyone's familiar with them. It's clear how it should work and that sort of thing. That should also start. Those are sort of the organizational resource support pieces. But then I think, and this is where council will have to give it some serious thought, is to formalize and implement the preferred CAO model. And that would be after a few months of the interim CAO role working and getting these important pieces done in the first 2 to 3 months. Then formalizing and implementing the preferred CAO model piece should start. And you would look at the job description being prepared and a recruitment strategy designed, and the interim CAO and council could work together on that. And then incorporate changes to the current SMT job descriptions to reflect the approved CAO role and management model, and then conduct job evaluations and implement the changes as each SMT member retires, because your jobs and the descriptions of those jobs are going to change over time. It could take up to 5 years for all of that to happen, but start the process now so that each time it's done, properly done, each job is properly evaluated in your pay evaluation scheme, policies and that sort of thing. So that would be an important piece as well. And then reestablish, because you did them, your regular employee performance evaluations and employee recognition and appreciation events, staff appreciation events. I think even today, even more so, that sort of acknowledgement of the dedication and professionalism of your staff is something that's always important. Think about what they've accomplished during this pandemic and things like that. And again, the interim CAO and SMT would be responsible for getting employee performance evaluations up and running. And then as this process unfolds, as you begin to get that 3 to 6 month period, you could begin to put the recruitment process together for the CAO position if council decides to go to that position. And the interim CAO and council would work their way through that. And then the last piece of the critical implementation plan would be to conduct interviews and select a suitable CAO candidate, again, if council goes in that direction. And I've got a date of April 30th there, 2021. It could be May 15th, it could be May 30th. I don't, these things often take a little more time as you begin to work your way through it. But this is not an unrealistic time frame, about 3 to 6 months. If council decides to follow through on the full course of the recommendations to the structure, it would take that long to begin to put all the pieces in place. I don't think I have anything more to add, Your Worship, Mayor Edie, to this at this moment. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point.
Okay, open it up to council for questions and comments. Councilor Hines.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stephen, for providing your final report and listening to our comments. I do really support the idea of an interim CAO, someone that has had experience in that, and we're not just throwing somebody in there, here, start your job, and not kind of knowing where to start. Certainly they'd know if they're applying for the job, that how the CAO system works, but understanding what we already have here and how the senior managers do work very well at this time and how we can integrate that into exactly the steps that you put forward. So I'm very interested in that, to have somebody come in and for 3 to 4 months, not have to worry about how things might or might not operate as your ongoing job, but to be there as a resource. So I see that as a really positive step for us if this is where we want to go. And thank you for mentioning, certainly over the past number of years, how well the senior management team has worked and the many things that we've accomplished with the great staff that we have. So thank you for mentioning that.
My pleasure.
Okay. Further comments? Councillor Sidney.
Thank you very much. I know it by looking at this, the 53 pages and the amount of work that went into it with the interviews and stuff. So I appreciate the effort. I don't even know if it's going to be posed as a proper question, because I know we got timelines and you've all the recommendations and there's this option, that option, this option, that option. What is kind of the next step? Like what do we have a committee of a whole and we vote on it? How do we go from here to the next part?
Yes, good question, fair question. You should meet as committee of the whole. You should have a full discussion and a full review of all of the recommendations and make decisions on those recommendations.
Would that be a closed session?
I beg your pardon?
Would that be a closed session or open?
If there is any confidential information, well, my reaction is no, unless you begin to, and it's been a while since I was a closed meeting investigator. I think that your Kim Bulmer would be up to date and current, and I think Kim should be invited, Your Worship, if he could be right now at this moment, to add his view of this. My initial view, Councillor Sidney,
Yep.
is that it would be open, because I don't see too many closed meeting things in there unless you begin to talk about individuals and particularly specific contract details and different things like that. That may necessitate closing the meeting. But speaking to the idea of changing your organizational structure, I don't see that as a closed meeting, an item that would qualify for closed meeting. But Kim, well, you're the up-to-date expert.
You know, I think you're right on point, Stephen, and I think, you know, this level of conversation and the level of decision-making that's contemplated in the implementation work plan is certainly can be done in open. It's when you want to get conversation that's more has more personal elements to it, whether you're identifying a particular member of the senior management team, or you're talking about contracts, you're talking about you know, some options with HR implications are legal. That's when you may. So I think the first meeting you may not go that far, but of course closed sessions are always available if the meeting gets to a discussion point where you feel that you need to go closed, then at that point you do so. So it just depends where conversation needs to go to, and we can give you certainly some advice on that during the meeting if conversations are heading that way.
Perfect. I just wasn't sure because it's based on employment type of stuff. I wasn't sure if it would be a closed thing or if it had to be more open and get specific.
Okay, Stephen?
Councillor Sidney, if, for example, as Kim noted earlier, and I'm repeating Kim, I apologize, but if, for example, you begin to have a discussion about the contracts of individual SMT members, then that, I believe, is a matter that you would want to say the discussion should be continued in closed session and then come out into open session when you finish talking about an individual specific contractual details. I think I'm right on that, but Kim, tell me.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep, perfect, thank you.
That's certainly correct, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Hines.
Just a further question. In that committee of the whole, two questions here actually. Stephen, would you be a part of that to kind of lead us through that discussion so that, you know, okay, we're taking this recommendation and so that we stay on track? I think it's great to have somebody that's kind of on the outside and that we are making a discussion and making a roadmap to move forward. And the second question would be, at that committee of the whole meeting, we'd probably establish some type of budget that we could set aside to, once we come up with all those recommendations, what that's going to cost us, so that we could surely keep track of that, whether we're hiring somebody to be when we hire somebody to be the interim person, and any other kind of consulting that we'd have to do to make this work and draw out the roadmap and then just get on with it. Because I think that we do really need that to stay within these time frames. As you know, we have many other things on our plate, but I think this is very important. And if we were to commit ourselves to maybe a committee of the whole every second week or something, I don't know, I'm just suggesting this. I haven't had a moment to talk to the mayor about it, but if we were to commit to that, then we could certainly move through this and get on with it. And it's easier to say we're going to do that and then be able to cancel it because we don't need to.
Yeah. I would make this offer. I would be happy as you can continue to complete your review of this report and attempt to arrive at the recommendation and the direction you're going to establish, I would just simply consider it part of the report, and I would be happy now. I've done my work. I don't need to bill for any more work, but I would be happy to be a resource person available on the side if you needed to discuss a point or two during your committee of the whole meetings. We could make arrangements so that I'm available, readily available. And there would be no billing or expense attached to that. It would be simply me answering questions about the report I prepared.
Okay. Councillor Jamison, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, I did. Thank you. Okay, Stephen, so I just want to clarify, are you suggesting that we choose an existing SMT to assume that CAO role for a period of 6 months?
Yes.
Or are you saying we could do that, or we could actually like find a gig CAO for 6 months kind of thing just to help us?
Yes.
Because so you're kind of saying it's up to us on which way we want to go if we want to move forward.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Absolutely. And the advantage of, working with an SMT member is the person knows the organization. There's no question. The disadvantage is the time that's going to be required and how you want to move through. And SMT would, as I envisage the model, the optional model, SMT continues to perform, function, and do its job, get it done. The interim CAO role will provide some leadership and oversight as required, but simply would be responsible when working with council, committee of the whole, to implement each of the steps in the implementation strategy. Those steps that council approved to take.
Okay, but then if we're choosing an SMT that we currently have to do that position, something's got to give. They can't be the acting CAO and the SMT, so something's got to give.
Frankly, you are correct. To get it done, in my view, the second option is your most effective option.
Right.
And I think that and I think without, putting any sort of, without appearing like I'm trying to get a job, I can say this to you, because there are lots of qualified people in my position out there. Who can perform that type of work. But typically, you're going to require 1 to 2 days, and during a crunch day, a crunch week, let's say it's a little crazy, there might be once in a while you need 3. But typically 1 to 2 days works, based on my experience. You then look at before you get started, you have the person you're going to contract with simply provide their hourly wage and what they're charging in terms of any other expenses. And you nail that down quickly, right? Before you make any decision about indicating to anybody you're going to hire them, go out and make sure you just get that basic, that hourly wage that person's going to charge. Typically, those sorts of wages run in the range of CAO salaries. And typically they simply have HST attached to them, and they'll either charge their expenses or they'll incorporate their expenses into that fee. And that's all you need to know. You can work your way through that and get an answer to that fairly quickly in terms of that step. I think that what you want to be happy with is your COVID-19 protocols in the office, and that this person, whoever that person is, understands, supports, and has to work within those protocols and things like that. But beyond that, option number 2 is, as I said, is probably, well, not probably, in my professional opinion, the most effective way to go. It's just that you need to have that discussion, and you need to, and I had a sense that some people still want to have a discussion about how that CAO role should work in the organization overall and on an interim basis. So I hope this has been helpful and not confusing.
Nope, you've definitely answered my questions. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Evans, Councillor Coles? Councillor Sidney?
maybe more of a question to Treasurer O'Reilly, if he can come on here for a second. What all of this is great, but from a budget perspective, what would we need to do? Because I know we're in budgets now, but how do we roll out and look at this from a budget perspective? We're going to have to, like, as Councillor Hines said, the budget and all of that stuff. But what would be the next steps that we would take in order to look at the budget, the impact of the budget, the financial impact, and all of that stuff? I don't know if anybody has a little bit of a guidance on how we would do that.
Yes. Treasurer Riley.
In response to Councillor Sidney, I think first of all, you're never going to hear me say this again, but I think that the decision as to which direction council wants to go in should be made without being heavily impacted by the cost of doing so.
Okay.
This is a long-term organizational change that council is considering, and that issue, although finance has to be considered, I think it's of lesser consideration at this point in time than the major decision that's sitting in front of council.
So as far as the interim goes, if we were to do that hypothetically, that would just be something we would go with and figure it out, kind of thing. Like
You could finance it from the unallocated reserve or one of the other reserves, just so it doesn't impact directly on the 2021 budget at this point in time. The decision on a more permanent basis is one that would have to be rolled into future budgets and probably even provided for. If this is the direction the council is going to go in, then we know that in 2020 there will be a full CAO on board by the 1st of May or 1st of June or some point. So we'll certainly have to provide for that portion of salary and benefits for the balance of the year as a starting point. At least that way it's phased in over a 2-year period as opposed to starting on January 1st and providing for that salary. We can provide for it for half a year and then the full year impact in 2022.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'm not hearing any. Director Asselin.
Yes, just a question for Stephen. Just in option 2, so I fully can appreciate the option 2 seemed to point to hiring an experienced municipal CAO to act as an advisor to the council to work through the implementation and some of the issues. That's somewhat different than appointing that interim position as the municipal CAO and removing the functions of the CAO from the existing senior management team. I guess once those duties are removed from the senior managers, it's kind of hard to go back to that in the future, right? Like you're kind of locked into that until you have a CAO. So was the intent to have option 2 be an advisor or actually be appointed as the CAO for the corporation?
Well, as I see it, and it's a very good question and one that would have to be ironed out. But my initial sort of view on this, Michael, would be that SMT should just continue as it's currently functioning, and the interim role, particularly for the first couple of months, would be working closely with council and an SMT simply to implement the changes, as opposed to taking complete management control, if that's the word, of the whole organization. That, I think, should happen slowly and make sure we understand each step of the way. So it's a little bit of a hybrid between the two in a way. But I think that's probably the last thing, I think that an interim CAO role should do is to come in and start changing everything, including roles right from the get-go. I think that it would be more important to simply meet with SMT, hear what it's doing, offer any advice to SMT as it's functioning, and then provide the direct advice to SMT and to council in the implementation strategies. And the day-to-day business, that's what you're there as managers to do. If you need help or oversight or want to discuss it, then the interim CAO person can come in and help you with that piece as well and provide advice to SMT that is sort of consistent in the direction and steps that council's starting to take. But I just simply don't want to turn the cart upside down overnight.
And really appreciate the clarification, because the terms interim CAO sort of, to me, mean you're implementing, you know, you're assigning that duty to the interim person. So
Yeah.
thanks for the clarification. And I totally agree that that may be the proper direction to go as an advisor.
Thank you.
Again, anything else from council? Okay, hearing none. I certainly like the idea of appointing an interim of some sort or another to, I think we need somebody that, an outside source, in my mind, that has a fresh look at things, you know, versus having somebody from the inside that's already been there and done it. And, you know, so I think the outside look is good. I also think we need somebody to start to help us implement the steps we have to go. There's a lot of work to be done there for sure. And I think that somebody that can take off on the side as an interim CAO, et cetera, that can sit down and start putting that together so that then bring it forth one step at a time so that we're doing it in a constructive manner. I like that idea a lot, because at the end of the day, if we start jumping one step ahead of ourselves too fast, we could get onto the wrong path real quick. So I like to entertain that idea and whatever, and have a good look at it. And in the meantime, we can start to look at the long-term finances of it all. I certainly have concern about that. A lot of concern about the finances. You know, when it comes to the salary plus the benefits, etc., you're looking at a minimum $200,000 when it's full time. And I have way too much respect for the taxpayers of the town of Renfrew to say, I'm going to have to raise your taxes 2% or 2.5% just to hire another person. Right now with COVID, and there's a pile of people out there struggling. They've been lucky enough to get through the first phase of it, I think, fairly well because of subsidies and whatever the government has put forth, but they're going to come to an end shortly, and we're really going to have to face the music down the road. So at the end of the day, I like the idea of something on an interim basis, and I don't know what else to say. I really don't have anything else to say other than I'm very pleased with the report, and I think you've structured it in such a way that it gives us objectives and goals to work towards, which is always a good thing. And but it's easy to put it together, but we need somebody who's going to take it from one step to the next step to the next step, because, you know, as council members, there's a lot going on, and you know, and just to get a meeting together sometimes is a challenge. You get asked any of the department heads about that, trying to get everybody on the same page, that type of thing. So anyway, I have nothing else other than council may have more to say. If they do, last chance. And but the one last comment I'd like to hear from you, Mr. Fournier, is how do we go about, okay, say tonight is step number 1, how do we get to step number 2? So that's my concern right now. We don't go back to the table and we all start talking about it, but nobody really has a direction.
I think that it would be, I think from my chair, if direction from council in this regard would, you know, whenever you can establish that, would be, I would be happy to prepare a proposal that would give you all of the things you need to understand the financial obligations of the role over, say, up to a 6-month period. I would also be happy to provide the contact information of other qualified individuals if you would like to do that as well. But in order to get you up and moving in that direction, I'd be happy to take that step and provide those 2 pieces of information if you want those 2 pieces of information, so that you can begin to work with it when you're ready to work with it.
Okay. Councillor Hines.
Yeah, I just want to say again that I think that we've come a long way having looked at this and had a meeting to do that, offered our comments off to Mr. Fournier, and he's composed that into a report, and I don't want to lose that momentum. So I know it is your call, your worship, but I just would really like if we could set in place that, you know, whether it be every second Tuesday for now until maybe the end of November, we could meet just to get this going and then see where we're at. Because if you have that commitment of a meeting, then we'll certainly have it and we won't lose what we've drawn from tonight. So I don't know how fast you could have that ready, Mr. Fournier, but I do think that that if we, you know, set up a meeting for, I don't know, next Tuesday night, I don't have my calendar just here, just a second. I don't know where that falls with everyone. That would be the 2nd of, no, it would be the 3rd of November. Well, sorry, we have a planning meeting, but maybe we should have it every second Monday or something. I don't know how that falls with everyone, but because we do have several meetings on the Tuesday, but I just would really like to put that in place if that's possible. Just even the first meeting, just to get on with where we're going from this.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Fournier.
Councillor Hines through Mayor Reedy, I'd be happy to provide that proposal in short order without any problem, and the contact information for other qualified people. The next meeting to me sounds like it's still a meeting which you're discussing the recommendations of the report. And I'm prepared, that's simply part of the contract to complete this report. You're still reviewing that piece of the report. There would be no charge for me to sit in like this in a meeting to help in any way if you needed that help. It's when you start to actually implement the changes, we decide that we need to go forward and we need to take steps and we need to have those steps happen, that the proposal I'll send to you would kick in. Is that making sense, Your Worship and Councillor Hines, to?
Yeah, yes.
I think initially the next meeting is the important one to kick it off, to decide on what direction we're going to go.
Yes.
So basically, the next 2 weeks are hunting season. I don't know what, I know we have a couple of gentlemen who won't be around, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we do have a council meeting in a couple of weeks. And would it be that big a deal to have it an hour before, start an hour ahead on the council meeting maybe, and do it that night?
That would be fine because we're already committed that night. So that would be just fine. I just think it's important that we get on with it, and maybe we start at, I don't know how that works, not working anymore, but at 5:30 maybe even.
5:36, I don't know. Does that give you enough time, Mr. Fournier?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The information that you've asked for, if you decide to take that step beyond just, you know, making decisions about the report, I can have it delivered to you first of the week.
Okay, sounds good. Councillor Jamison.
Okay, so then now we're talking about having another meeting to make the decision on if we're moving forward or not. Is that correct? Is it, Councillor Hines, is that what you're thinking?
Sorry, I'm talking here to
So-
myself.
Okay, so
Yeah.
So this
Just to
next
answer your
meeting-
question, Arlene, my thought was that we don't lose the momentum that we have now. We have the
That's right.
report in front of us, so we need to kind of say, okay, we see these recommendations, and yeah, we're into hiring somebody to be the interim CAO, and this is what we need to do next. And, you know, discuss those recommendations, that that's indeed what council wants to do, just as Mr. Fournier outlined it. That's what I was thinking. I just don't want to lose that momentum, that we don't talk about it for a while and then we have to kind of go back to where we were.
No, I agree 100%. I don't want to lose the momentum either. And I've always been in favor of going this direction. And I'm just wondering, so like if we if we do a meeting in 2 weeks' time, that'll take, so like the process will be starting then. Is that correct?
Well, Mr. Fournier would be bringing forth a report and everything will be based on that report, I guess.
Okay.
That's correct,
And
Mr.
then
Fournier?
council, I'm sorry, Your Worship, I apologize.
Okay. So then I guess in the interim now, we're talking, now I haven't asked Clerk Bomer or Director Hill if they're the two that's going to be away, how that's going to fit into their schedule. We got to remember here, we do have senior staff that maybe they need some input into this. So maybe I'm calling them right now.
I think my only role will be to ensure that the meeting is properly established and set up. So if we're looking at November 10th, prior to our regular meeting of council, unless I hear otherwise, we'll consider a 5:30 or 6 p.m. start time. Obviously, knowing that there's a hard adjournment time of before 7 p.m. to be able to start our regular meeting. I guess any decisions that council reach or any direction can go forward to that meeting, or at the very least go forward to the next regular meeting after that for formal adoption. So I think it's just, I see the committee of the whole meeting being to determine a path forward as far as these initial decision points are essentially that first major decision point, and then go from there. So in saying that, I'm not planning to be here the 10th, but I don't think that matters one way or the other. So
Treasurer O'Reilly.
If I may be so bold, the first three decision points on page 34 do not involve the senior management team in any way whatsoever. The decision on the direction forward doesn't require senior management team input, I don't think. So whether we have two members away deep in the bush someplace shouldn't influence the timing of a meeting.
Okay. Director Hill, did you have anything to say?
I guess I do have something to say in that I'm just curious to know is it what I'm hearing and listening to, is it a decision's been made that you're going to go with option 2, or are you going to have any consultation with the current senior management team to ask for our opinion or our thoughts on this process?
Okay, I'll turn back to Mr. Fournier to maybe answer that question.
And thank you, Your Worship, through Mr. Hill. I think there's the principal decision making by way of a resolution with respect to selecting that option is with council. The process of getting there is such that if council wishes to have, and I would encourage it, to have SNT input, you should. And our SM available so that there's a full round discussion that takes place. But council, and I can't disagree with your treasurer. I did just simply say in the first two in particular, it was council. But that process of reviewing the report, finishing your review and selecting what option to go with is a matter that when you're discussing it, certainly you would invite a comment from your senior management staff, and then council or committee of the whole would make its decision. I don't want to change the process on you, but I think that SNT and council worked hard to get this proposal up and running and out, and because they together, and I think together they should at least have a good discussion about how both administration and council feel about the direction they take, and then council makes that decision.
Okay, so you'll make that, put that in your report in writing so that as a recommendation or whatever that senior management team is consulted at that meeting.
Well, I can certainly make that point.
I'll get to you in a second, Councillor Hines. Would that satisfy Director Hill?
I just think it's, you know, an approach that, that council would want to take. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just thought it would be an approach that council would want to take, is to talk to the current CAO structure that is in place, to receive their feedback on moving forward, steps moving forward.
I absolutely agree. I think you need to be part of the process. I mean, you are part of the management team for a long, long time. So anyway, that's so Mr. Forney will have that included in his draft report coming back to us.
I will make some notes on that, Your Worship.
Okay. I see that Rebimo has joined us. Whatever, Rebimo, we went through it, and seems that we're going to have, maybe Mr. Forney could just give you a real quick recap of the next steps we're going to.
I won't talk about all of the changes to the report at all, review. What I'll say is that council, and rightly so, has decided that within 2 weeks it would like to meet to choose the best interim CAO role to go forward with. I'm to provide some additional information, including the recommendation that senior management team members be part of the final review of the report and the discussion on that go forward option with council, and then council makes that decision. Once that decision's made, then working through the more detailed implementation strategy on pages 34 and 35 would roll out, in a manner that council and SNT are part of and informed of, and the interim role, whatever role it's going to be, whether it's a combined manager role from SNT or an external person with experience, work together to move through and get those steps up and running in the first 3 to 6 months window. So that's really what things have boiled down to this evening in terms of the next step.
Okay. The Councillor Hine had her hand up there.
Yeah, I kept waving at you. Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say that just to assure Director Hill and the rest of the senior management, that's the way I saw it as unfolding out, as number A on that agenda would be the discussion of, you know, where we want to go and what we want to do. Not to belabor it, but to know that we're all on the same page. And I'm very interested to hear what the senior management have to say. I realize it is a council decision of how we want to operate or not operate, but I think that I'm very interested in their comments, and we do owe it to them. They've carried us all this time in the senior management system, and I just would like to, I would just really like to hear what they have to say and hear the pros and cons of it. I mean, at this moment from that presentation, I am fairly convinced that moving to a interim CAO that could guide us in the process to how it would work, not basically overseeing the senior management team at this time or any other thing, but just to kind of guide us in what we need to address and what we need to be working through, and get that roadmap in place so that we can move forward. That's what my thoughts were on that.
Okay.
So I didn't want to confuse everybody on what it said.
Rebimo, did you want to say anything?
No, I reviewed the report and then compared it to the newest version of it, newest draft. I'm comfortable with what I heard to date, and my apologies. Something happened that kept me away.
It's not a big problem. Whatever. It's so anyway. Anything else from council? Councillor Sidney.
Thank you. I just want to make it clear that, you know, I'm taking this very seriously, and I have not made a decision on this. So I appreciate that other councillors seem to be leaning one way or the other, but that is their views on it. And I just want to make sure that you know, it doesn't appear that the decision has already been made, and I want to make that specifically clear on my end. So thank you.
Okay, anything else from council? Councillor Hines.
Sorry, just one more comment. I didn't want to be that strong on it, Councillor Sidney. I just wanted to say that I think that when we move forward, if we move forward on this, when we move forward on this, we need to all be on the same page. And we need to hear from each member of council and each member of the senior management team where they sit on this, so that it's not just 3 or 4 people pushing this forward and at the displeasure of other members of council. To me, your comments, as are the other members of council, are important in my final decision on this. But right now, I was just expressing how I was leaning and how I would really like to get this moving forward and make some kind of a decision. And if we say, you know what, we just need to tweak what we have now, then I would probably be happy with that. But I just think it's important to make that decision and either move on with it or file it and do the tweaking we need to do and move on with bigger and better things.
Okay, the council members have all been heard. One last chance, I guess. Okay, hearing nothing. Anything from senior management team? Okay.
No, nothing, Mayor Edie, other than I'll get talking to you. Obviously, it'll have to be tomorrow or Friday, and we'll try to, and maybe even reach out to Stephen and make sure we solidify the dates for that meeting, the time of that meeting, and just be confident we know what we're planning for and what the game plan is moving forward. So we'll do that in the next couple of days.
Yeah, the only comment I have on this is going back to Director Hill's comments. Basically, senior management team want to have their comments. Well, you know, if you're on holidays, you're on holidays. So we may have to postpone that meeting till the following week in order to accommodate. So I don't think it's fair to leave anybody out of this. And so I don't know if that was if that's helpful or not. I'd sooner not postpone it, but I mean, people are on holidays, they deserve their holidays and they wait all year for it. So anyway, I'll leave it at that for now. But anything else from senior management? Director Aston.
Yes, thanks through the mayor. I think definitely look forward to the next meeting and just be I guess careful in the terms. The interim CAO I see is the CAO of the corporation. So if it's an advisor position, just ask council to consider the language they use in these appointments. And but look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, and the Renfrew Town Council received the Municipal Structure Review final report dated October 15th, 2020, as prepared by Mr. Fournier, by Fournier Consulting Services. Mover, please. Councillor Jamison, seconded by Councillor Evans. Okay, any questions on this? All in favor? Carried. Okay. The bylaw 77/2020 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of Corporation and Town of Renfrew meeting held October 28, 2020. You read it first time and deemed to have been read a second time. Over, please. Councillor Evans, second by Councillor Sidney. All in favor? Carried. The bylaw 77/2020 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of Corporation and Town of Renfrew meeting held October 28, 2020. You read a third time and be passed. Mover, please. Councillor Hines, second by Councillor Sidney. All in favor? Carried. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Fournier. Very well presented tonight and much appreciated. And anyway, you have a good week. We do now adjourn. It is 7:06. Thank you.
Thank you.